Hello, my friends, and welcome to Quartet. So nice to have you with us here today. We're going to get together and talk about a very interesting kind of subject associated with a big whistleblower that just came and talked about the United States having aliens and alien ships and all kinds of other kinds of stuff. So stay with us. We're coming to you, as we always do, from Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, where the Arlington Institute puts together this little forum every 2 weeks to think and consider deeply some of the major issues that are associated with this amazing kind of transition that we're in. And we're happy to have you with us. And I'm joined, as we always are, by our friends Penny Kelly. Hello, Penny. How are you?
Hi, John. Hi, everybody. It's good to be here.
And Kingsley Dennis. Hi, Kingsley.
Hello, John. Greetings, one and all from the UK.
Yeah, and Greg Braden. Hello, Greg.
Hello, everyone. I'm coming to you from Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. So thank you, John, for putting this together.
Sure. And so let's get into our subject of the day. As it turns out, I think in retrospect, you're going to say that we're living in this week has been one of the most, in historical terms, when you look back, is going to be one of the most significant ones in the history of this planet. Because what happened earlier last week and on Monday was a very high level, very accomplished intelligence officer from the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency came forward as a whistleblower and said in very clear terms that the United States for decades now has had in its possession not only ships, but component parts and materials of craft that are not from this planet, from somewhere else, not human made. And in addition, that we have had crashed bodies of the pilots or whatever, the crew members of these ships, and we've been analyzing them. This is of amazing significance because it is the first time that in any kind of an official way, and we can talk about what that means, an official way that the United States of America or any other country, because they all kind of follow the United States in this regard, has acknowledged the actual existence of other terrestrial beings and craft. And it has always been speculation before, but this gentleman, David Grush, has unearthed, because he was had very high security clearances, has unearthed deep black programs that nobody else in the government knew about, and was responsible for exposing them to the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, which has a subcommittee that is looking specifically at these kinds of issues. And so this is working at a very high level in our government, and the implications of this are just extraordinary. And so our question today is, what in the world does this all mean, and where am I to go from here? And we will not get a chance to really deal with this in depth in one session, and we may come back and do this again. But this is of giant historic implications, and I'm, for one, quite interested in what you all have to say about it. So let's start with Penny.
So when you ask the question, what does it mean? The first thing that came to me was it means they've been lying for 80 dang years. I don't see the government as having any intention of doing something good with this. From my point of view, it's like the timing here is just too uncanny in terms of the concerns that many people have that they're going to do some sort of false flag. They're going to start introducing the whole ET UFO thing. They've tried to redefine it to UAP. I'm like, just leave it alone. those are other people from other places, and they're going to try and do. It looks to me like they're moving ahead with their plan to create a false flag operation that they blame on ETs and UFOs. And it's really the capacity that we have developed in secret over the last 80 years. And they're going to try and carry that out. So that's a big thing. Historically, though, the greater population has never really understood consciousness or perception. Only kings and presidents and people who were interested in power really understood that it's all about perception, and that, I think, would change in a major way. People would begin to understand that if you can keep consciousness just focused here, you're missing a whole bunch of other things. We see it all the time, but I'm not sure that the greater population sees that and really understands how easily they are tricked into listening to, talking about, watching meaningless things, or things that are loaded with disinformation. So in terms of what would it mean, that's a big thing. Consciousness would change dramatically. It'll mean all new concepts for us as a people. All the paradigms will change. All of the power will shift. All of the understanding of how reality works will change. I think people will begin to understand the functions of shifting consciousness. People think they have one consciousness. No, each frequency allows a different type of consciousness, a different type of perception. And so people would begin to understand that they can get out of their rut by shifting their own consciousness. Some of that done with breath, some of that just done as you learn how to do that.
Well, thank you. It begs a number of questions in my mind that we can come back and talk about. But one of them is, if the government was going to come clean, to the extent, whatever that means, come clean about some of this, how would they do it if not the way they're doing it? I mean, there's always the questions about they haven't been telling us the truth in the past, but then they start to try to tell the truth, and everybody says, "But you're still lying," and so I don't know.
I'm skeptical. I think what we're witnessing that we are in a big psyops, a psychological operation.
Yeah,
and I'm going to explain why. And it's timing. When you get timing and certain synchronicities coming, then there's something, I think, afoot. And not only, only a month ago or so, when we had these unidentified balloons, we had the commander of NORAD coming out with some ridiculous statements saying he doesn't know what these, UAPs are when they have the most sophisticated radar on the planet, and even suggesting it could be, the aliens. So let's look at how these events are coming together in recent times. Only this week, the exact same week, we have this disclosure. We have this big UFO landing in Las Vegas, where this family had these, poor aliens turn up in their backyard, and this has now gone viral. And so, go back a bit further, and we've already mentioned UAP. Why did the powers that be wish to try to change this nomenclature from UFO to UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon? It's because they want to try and take control of the narrative. If you want to name something and then you are the namer, you've immediately take control of the narrative. So they want to take it away from what's been previous, and it feels like they were setting something up. Now, disclosure, why is it happening now so powerfully? And you mentioned, John, that it's not been on the mainstream news. Well, it has here. When I did a scan for it, what came up first? The Daily Mail. If you know of UK newspapers, the Daily Mail is the most popularist you can get. And they were also running the story about how the Vatican knew about one of the first UFO crashes in 1933, and how it had crashed in Italy, and Mussolini knew about it. And so after the collapse of Mussolini's government, the Vatican passed it on to the USA, who went in there and took the craft and all their beings. And David Grush, I think is, I don't know how you pronounce it, David Grush has actually said that his understanding is that these aliens are malevolent. They have killed and they are not kind, in his own words. So there again, we have, once you have the negative alien threat, something, your radar comes up, because this is the PSYOPs narrative, the alien threat. And then what happens if there is an alien threat? I mean, we know that this was Braun's dying deathbed confession. Werner Braun, who was the head of NASA, who was a German engineer who worked on the V2 rockets, brought over with Operation Paperclip, put in charge of NASA. And on his deathbed, we know he said to Kathleen Roslin that there's going to be certain agendas, such as the breakdown of social narratives, the war against Islam, etc. And the final one would be the alien threat narrative. Of course, it means if they are playing the alien threat narrative, it means that it's their last card. So they've got to get it right, which means they're desperate to play. And if they play it, it's a big one. So I'll come to that in a minute. And also, if there is an alien threat, what would happen to our nations? They would go into a state of emergency. What happens when you have a state of emergency? You press the button for COG, continuity of government. And that means the deep state, who are continuity of government, they are the emergency government, they are legally able to step in power and bypass all the so-called legal democratic governments. So it gives the deep state cabal the perfect excuse they want to step in and take control, which they've been wanting to do for a long time anyway.
The implications, it would change everything. The disclosure changes everything, religious and spiritual implications, certainly political, cultural, scientific, social, financial implications. I'm a systems thinker, and this is not happening in a vacuum. When you step back and you look at the big picture, and this is what Kingsley, I think, was alluding to, and Penny, that we are nearing the close of these converging cycles where everything is up for grabs. And climate and conflict and financial cycles and all of those things. And the Great Reset is, they're attempting to implement this Great Reset. Central bank digital currencies, all of these things are going on. And I think they're struggling with the ability to implement these things. All of a sudden, now, rather than soft disclosure, we're getting a full-on disclosure of some kind. And it is being presented as a threat. And I think this is what's really interesting. And I think about this a lot, John. If there are multiple species out there. It's not just one alien, from one planet. And they have multiple agendas. And if we have been contacted, as the evidence suggests, by a species in mechanical craft that are still using mechanical weapons, and that they are willing to trade their technology for human lives, what kind of a species would that be? Is that someone that we want to engage with? And unfortunately, that's what the evidence suggests was happening back in the 30s and 40s. The good ones were leaving us alone, and they're not moving around in mechanical craft the way we would think about them, and they're honoring our sovereignty. So I think we have to be very aware of who it is that we're contacting and how that's presented. The religious implications, and John, you alluded to this when you talked about the Buddhists and the Hindus, it's determined by the orientation of the religions. Buddhists and Hindus would have no problem with beings. They've already got, the Hindu tradition's got 25,000 deities anyway. They just add a couple more and say, hey, it's all part of the mix. The Catholic Church had to come to terms with this. And I have a paper that was published, very interesting, by the Society of Catholic Scientists. And they had to shift their perspective, and their direct quote, it says, the discovery of life on other worlds would not at all be inconsistent with Catholic belief. But then they go on to say that it could be the opportunity for these other life forms to be redeemed through the viewpoints of the Catholic tradition. In other words, God has created a plethora of life, and maybe they're coming to us to be redeemed through the doctrine of the Catholic Church. And a lot of the fundamental religions think the same way, that these beings can be saved. So when we look at all of these, and we could go on and on, the political and the cultural implications and the financial implications, there is a real concern that the markets are going to tank when this comes out. And they want the central bank digital currencies in place before that happens. So there is an effort to remake the world. And the pandemic pushed us in a direction that didn't quite get us there. The war in Ukraine is pushing us. It's not quite getting us there. There's something else that's needed. And I'm of the opinion with Penny and certainly with Kingsley that the way this is being presented, I think I wouldn't be surprised to see a threat posed with the intention of bringing people together to unify against this threat. And the savior will be, all we have to do is agree to certain policies to protect us. And by accepting those policies, the trade-off is that we will give away a lot of our freedoms.
The other thing that keep in mind is that this is coming out of the military and the intelligence community. If you've ever spent any time inside of that organization, you know they're in the threat identification and defense business. When you get to the place where you want to expose this thing through the people who know something about it, their natural inclination is to position this in terms of threat. And certainly the initial guys back in 2017, that's in fact, that was the way they were talking about it. You just got to, again, come back to say, how would they do this if they were going to do this? And it may be an op, and it may be some kind of thing, but maybe there was this, maybe these people that just felt that it was their duty to do so because that's the way people in the military think. And then some people in the intelligence communities think this is the right thing to do in terms of our country and what I've committed to and what I've obligated myself to in terms of my personal situation. And so there's I don't know. I mean, to jump to a conclusion here, this is a big deal, and I would argue against that. Thank you all, the three of you. I appreciate always these conversations. And thank you all who are our viewers and for coming and being a part of this. We can't do this without you. It doesn't make much sense to talk to ourselves. And if you like this, I hope that you'll go and check out not only arlingtoninstitute.org, which is where we all come from, and all of the many other programs that we have. And I encourage you to, in particular, to look at Transition Talks, which is our lecture series that we do every month here in Berkeley Springs. Greg will be with us in August. We're very much looking forward to that. Maybe we'll talk some more about this when we get there, but we have a variety of things and that certainly you'll find interesting if you find this conversation of interest. Thank you all and be well. And thank you to all of you for being a part of this. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all so much.
Okay.
Thank you.